Welcome to Utah Stories. My name's Rich Markosian. I'm the editor and publisher of Utah Stories magazine. So today I wanted to talk about things that you're not supposed to talk about. And I wanted to get into this because I feel like there's a problem and it's only kind of getting worse. There's things you're allowed to talk about, and there's things that if you don't self-censor yourself and you just start talking about these things, you get into some hot water really fast. And I've been witnessing this happening. I haven't talked about it because I like being on YouTube. I like the YouTube platform. I like what we've done on YouTube. So I kind of risk getting struck by YouTube by talking about these things. But I'm going to frame my discussion around the celebrities who are allowed to talk about these things and the non-celebrities who are not allowed to talk about these things. So I'm a non-celebrity. So I'm not allowed to talk about these things, but I think I'm allowed to talk about celebrities. So I'm hoping that's my little loophole and I can talk about the things you're not supposed to talk about. So that's what we're going to get into in this little pre-show episode. But before we do, I want to show you our brand new issue of Utah Stories magazine. I've got it up on the screen for you. Our amazing cover is done by Young Huang, and he's been doing our covers lately, doing an incredible job. And this issue gets into our summer fun guide. So everything fun you want to do in Utah, this is going to show you the less traveled, less popular places to go. This is also getting into comments we've had with our past podcast guest, former Mayor Rocky Anderson, who's running for mayor again, and homeless advocate Ty Bellamy. We've got comments on that. I'm not going to read the comments for lack of time, but pick up the issue, read about it. It's awesome. And then comments about the hasty demolition of the Utah Pantages Theater. A lot of comments on that. We're getting into that later in the show today. We're having on the show Michael Valentine, who was an activist trying to save the Pantages Theater. He's going to get into all the politics behind why that theater was demolished hastily, and he's going to be on in about 10 or 15 minutes, so stay tuned for that. Cool comments about that, and then comments related to our Instagram reel showing homeless camp abatements. We if you don't follow us on Instagram, we'll show the homeless community, what's going on downtown, as well as a lot of fun hikes and things you can do around downtown. That's Utah Stories on Instagram. So anyway, experience the joy of discovery in Utah's most spectacular places. So this intro was written by my wife, who used to be a fan of camping. She no longer likes to camp because a couple times we ran into some wildlife. The scariest wildlife, and it's not even wildlife, we ran into was a herd of cows when we were camping in the desert. She thought that was really scary. Some cows approached us. I didn't think it was that scary. Anyway, that you can read her intro, but she still loves and appreciates Utah very much, being from Bosnia, and she still goes on hikes with me, but she should be camping. She needs to start camping again. 5 ways to get out of the house with your kids. This is all about the drum circle at Liberty Park. This is about Crawdad Canyon. But anyway, a lot of cool stories. This is our Moab story about Faith. I think her last name is Durham, Faith Dickey. She's become an amazing advocate for women who are learning how to highline across canyons. Really cool story by Rachel Fixon. And yeah, so go pick it up. And if you want to subscribe to the magazine and support this program, you can do so at our brand new website. It's a super awesome website. Go out and click on subscribe, and you can become a subscriber. And very soon you'll be able to become a member of Utah Stories. And that's going to be $5 a month. This is only $3 a month. All right, so let's get into things you can say and things you cannot say. And who is allowed to say things that other people aren't allowed to say. So I'd say it was probably about a year and maybe a few months ago, probably a year and a half ago, I watched a Joe Rogan episode where he had on the program listen to it, actually. He had on the program a guy named Robert Malone. And Robert Malone worked on the RNA delivery mechanism of the COVID vaccine. He had personally worked on that technology that was going to allow the COVID vaccine to be widely distributed in a way that a vaccination had never worked before. And I'm just talking about what he said on Joe Rogan's program. I'm not giving my personal opinions, so I hope YouTube will allow me to say what I'm about to say. But Dr. Robert Malone, he said that the COVID vaccine should not be administered to pregnant women because they did not study the vaccine on pregnant women, and they had not properly studied the vaccine on children. And Dr. Malone also went on to say that if you'd already had COVID, you probably shouldn't take the vaccine. So he was saying something contrary to what the CDC was saying. And it was like he was on Joe Rogan's show, and then Joe Rogan, I think it was right before that interview or slightly thereafter, he had COVID, and Joe Rogan started using alternative therapies, and Joe Rogan had never been immunized, never taken the vaccine, and he talked about and promoted ivermectin as an effective treatment. Then CNN, the most prominent news organization arguably in the entire world, went on to smear Joe Rogan, saying Joe Rogan is promoting the use of horse dewormer to treat COVID. What kind of whack job uses horse dewormer to promote COVID? And then there ensued a battle between Joe Rogan and CNN, where Joe Rogan said, ivermectin is not a horse dewormer. The guy who came up with ivermectin also got a Nobel Peace Prize because it saved millions of lives of people as an anti-parasite treatment and therapy. And so all of this, as this debate ensued between Joe Rogan and CNN, and then Joe Rogan had on his program Sanjay Gupta and grilled Sanjay Gupta saying, why are you telling everybody I'm using horse dewormer when you know that ivermectin is one of the most effective treatments for parasites that's ever existed in the world? It saved millions of lives. Why are you smearing me on your program? And Sanjay Gupta had no good explanation at all. And Joe Rogan came out on top, in my opinion, in that ongoing debate. And CNN looked like absolutely, in my opinion, again, like they were protecting their biggest advertising base, which were the pharmaceutical companies, that nothing should be said that could possibly diminish the earnings or the validation or the claims that all the pharmaceutical companies were making about the vaccinations. And so now flash forward a few more months, we get a notice from YouTube saying that one of our videos from 3 years ago, where we simply reported on a KUTV news story that a woman in Ogden might have died from the COVID vaccine, we were now struck down by YouTube, community strike against us. We were banned from live streaming. We were banned from uploading. We immediately saw a huge dip in our viewership for a piece of content we posted 3 years prior about the COVID vaccination and its effectiveness. So YouTube was saying, you better not talk about the vaccination, even though COVID's in the rearview mirror. You better not have talked about the COVID vaccination. You better not talk about anything related to the COVID vaccination because you are not Joe Rogan. And I kind of found that interesting because obviously I don't think it was YouTube, some person at YouTube. It was their algorithm. It was AI. And to say that we're not under the influence of AI now, and AI is not acting as an overlord, protecting the speech and what we're able to say and what we're not able to say based on the corporate sponsors, is inaccurate. We are absolutely living under the hierarchy of our tech overlords. And it's I think just as a small YouTube platform and as a small publisher, I think every independent publisher who is more interested in the truth than any other aspect of the business should be speaking out against this, because obviously these are these are the mechanisms for facilitating the public discourse in the 21st century. YouTube, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram. How else are we able to get out anything anybody has to say to a mass audience other than these platforms? And so what I found is, like, Joe Rogan is able to talk about it. Bill Maher has really been able to talk about it up to a degree. But then a guy named Theo Vaughn, who's a friend of Joe Rogan's, he wasn't able to talk about it. He was struck down when he was talking about the COVID vaccine. And so I think YouTube, you just have to come out with a clear policy saying, okay, if your name's Joe Rogan, if your name's Bill Maher, maybe if your name's Elon Musk, you can talk about these things. But if your followers or your subscriptions to your channel are less than a certain amount, then you can't talk about it. Why don't you just come out with that document, and then I'll know what we can talk about and what we can't. Because I've noticed that Robert F. Kennedy, a new presidential candidate, he's getting smeared widespread in the media because he's talking about vaccines as well. And Joe Rogan had him on his show. I don't think that episode's been taken down by YouTube, but Joe Rogan's on the Spotify platform. I think he's able to talk about it there. But Theo Vaughn talked to Robert F. Kennedy, and that was taken off YouTube, and he got a channel strike against him. So are you not able to talk about any vaccines at all? Is that now off limits? Or are we just not able to go there anymore because our corporate overlords of the pharmaceuticals have so much money and so much spending power they can just silence the whole conversation? I just like to know. And I'd like to have you chime in on this, because if you've got an opinion about what you should talk about and how we should label misinformation, disinformation, how we somehow manage that, I just can't come up with a way or a mechanism or an entity that should be deciding stuff is misinformation or disinformation. Because if it's the government, I don't see them not being disinterested in the whole debate. The government has special interests controlling much of their purse strings and power. So how do we manage it? I just don't see any other way than letting everybody talk. So anyway, that's my little pre-show for today. Coming up next on the program, we have somebody who's coming on the program who isn't afraid to talk about preserving historic downtown Salt Lake City. His name's Michael Valentine. He actually chained himself to the Utah Pantages Theater. He did that for a few days to get the attention brought to the scandal that was really going on, in that the Pantages was being demolished hastily before financing was in place to build what was supposed to be a giant residential skyscraper tower. And they quickly demolished the building, and now, whoops, we don't have the financing to build the new building. So Michael's going to be on with us in just a few minutes. So hang on tight, and we will be right back.